Okay, so welcome everybody to, this is week 3 of Discovering Buddhism, How to Meditate. And as usual, we're going to start with meditation, generating some positive minds to begin the class with. Those minds are refuge and bodhicitta, which are actually modules further on down the line for Discovering Buddhism. But they come up quite a lot from Buddhist practice point of view, so it's important we kind of get into the habit of doing it as we would do later on. So let me just share my screen with you now so we can use that as a basis for our meditation together. So we just find a comfortable spot, comfortable position to meditate in. You should be experts by now. This is week 3. Don't know what you're doing by now. I'm just going to mute everybody, if that's okay. But if you want to unmute yourselves to ask questions and things, feel very free to do that. Okay, so just spend a moment finding your posture. That's the first step, right? So finding a comfortable position is going to enable you to do the inner work of meditation. Meditation is an inner discipline. So we're detaching ourselves from the outside world, from the kind of objects the senses would fall to, the sights, the sounds, smells, etc. We're trying to detach ourselves from those and just put the body in one position where we can work with it for a long time without it getting too, uncomfortable.
Le lien. So, si t'aimes pas, tire-toi, quoi. Oh, qu'est-ce qu'ils font Je crois qu'ils font une espèce de
live ou tu peux rattraper après parce que là.
Hi, Amina. I'm not sure if you can hear us, but I've just muted you because you're anyway. Okay. So if you can recall those 7 points of posture that we talked about in week 1, that would be great. The important thing is we need a relaxed but alert posture. So in the evening, the tendency will be to be a bit drowsy, especially if we've eaten already. So we need to make sure the room is fairly light. Our posture is upright, we're not slouching, the back is supported, but we have to be relaxed within that. We can't be too tense, otherwise the mind is going to find it difficult to relax. So we have to be relaxed but alert, and that's quite a fine line we need to walk as a meditator. And just checking that you're able to breathe freely. You're not holding in the stomach, you can breathe freely and deeply. And then your own time, take 3 long, deep breaths in and out through the nose. So the first 2 lines of this verse, as I mentioned before, are refuge lines. And the second 2 lines of the first verse are the bodhicitta lines. So if you were around for Geshe Jampol's class last Wednesday night, when he talked about the 3 scopes, this idea of refuge can apply to the 3 scopes he mentioned. So we can be thinking we want to avoid the suffering of this life and work for future lives. We can be thinking of avoiding the suffering of future lives, not wanting to go to lower rebirths, but attain a precious human rebirth. We could be taking refuge to avoid samsara completely and work for liberation for ourselves. Or we can be working for taking refuge to be free of all self-cherishing and self-grasping, all the obstacles in the mind, to become fully enlightened for the benefit of all living beings. So the different levels at which you can take refuge. And the essence is that it's a concern or a fear, as Venerable Tarchin translated, fear of the sufferings that might occur for us in the future, and a conviction or a trust, the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha are the kind of escape, if you like, from that. So we definitely don't want suffering. We only want happiness. And the Buddha and his teachings are a way out. Right? So if we're a Buddhist, we would have taken refuge in those. But if we're not a Buddhist already, then that's fine. You just take them as, at least, respectfully, you listen and following them as potential advice. If we're from another tradition, then we just respect the Buddha as a spiritual leader, and we follow maybe that can enhance our own tradition. And the second two lines are about wanting to become the best possible version of ourselves, an enlightened being, an awakened being, removing all the obscurations in the mind, all the afflictions and their seeds, and all the imprints left by those seeds, so that we can then be of real support and comfort for others, so that we ourselves will become the refuge. That would be quite amazing, right? So then it's kind of the second two lines are moving us from our own concern into thinking about all the other living beings. So it's quite a powerful mind to begin with. So those two minds are really important for beginning our practice. So whatever you understand by those two minds already, just hold that as your thought or the feeling, your reaction to those ideas, those minds, as we recite this verse together 3 times in Tibetan. Sangye churang saki chanam lai janchu badu dadni kapsuji dagi chanyangi pesanam gi drala penchi sangye druparasho Sangye churang saki chanam janchu badu dadni kapsuji Dagi chenyengi pesanamgi drala penchi sangye drupalasho Sangye churang saki chanam janchu badu dadni kapsuchi Dagi chenyengi pesanamgi drala penchi sangye drupalasho. And recite the next verse in English together. He who, caring with compassion, taught the holy Dharma so that all wrong views would be abandoned, Gautama, homage to him. Thank you, everybody. So just to mention that last verse there from the Vinaya, I think it might come from the text. That's one of the verses that His Holiness the Dalai Lama likes to use before teachings. And it's good to remember that here we are looking at the teachings of a particular awakened being who lived 2,500 years ago, the Buddha. That's who we're calling Gautama in the bottom line of Gautam in Tibetan. And he was an individual who discovered a certain level of reality, and removed all obscurations in his mind to get to such a point that there was nothing left in his mind, if you like, that was an obstacle to seeing everything as it is. And sometimes this phrase was used, as mentioned last Wednesday night, as they are and as many as they are. So how things exist, the reality, the emptiness of all phenomena, and as many as those phenomena are the conventional aspects. When we study a bit more, we'll realize that actually the qualities of a Buddha get quite sci-fi. It gets a bit gets a bit out there, the things that a Buddha can do. But the point is that, it was through meditation and through analyzing and removing those things in the mind that the Buddha became awakened. So this module, how to meditate, is really important, because that's how we get to enlightenment ourselves. Studying, first of all, so we know what to meditate on, and then meditating so that we become familiar with the topics ourselves, so we understood them without having to rely on someone else, and then realizing them, kind of probing them deeper and deeper into our minds so that they become spontaneous realizations. And realizations is a term that's used in Buddhism to just mean that you understand it. You can see the reality. You don't have to rely on someone else to tell you anymore, or kind of guess what it's like. You've realized it yourself. And that's what we're aiming for here, isn't it? We're aiming to have all these realizations, these minds, ourselves. Now, we've got them to some extent already. We've got the kind of beginnings of them. We've got the basis, which is our Buddha nature. It's all there ready to just be cleaned out and realized, but we just have to do some work to do the cleaning. Yeah. It's just a big cleaning job, really. And how we do the cleaning is we remove all the negative seeds in the mind once we realize emptiness directly. And then gradually all those positive minds kind of blossom and take the place. Anyway, we're going to talk a little bit today about the two types of meditation, which you'll see here in the week 3. So we've covered so far what is meditation. We looked a bit about posture. There was 7-point posture. We looked a bit about being aware last week and mindfulness introspection. We spent a bit of time also looking at motivation and dedication. This week we're looking at 2 types of meditation. Then next week we're looking at meditations to deal with disturbing emotions. Week 5, visualization and mantra recitation. That's quite an important feature of Tibetan Buddhist meditation, especially. And then week 6, looking at some practical considerations for how setting up a practice, a daily practice. Okay, so let me just start by asking you then, what are we doing for a dedication? What is the point of dedicating?
I've decided how we want our positive karma to ripen.
Yeah, that was a line I got from I think it was Geshe Sonam Nodrup, who was teaching at the Landa Monastery for a little while, and that's how he described it. And I kind of was stuck with me at that point. Yeah. You've got all this investment, these assets that you want to invest, and you're deciding which, where you want them to go. The theory is that if you don't just dedicate them, they can be lost, or the positive karmic seeds can be lost through anger and wrong views. When we get angry, we destroy a lot of positive karma.
But aren't we too dedicated to other people so that the other people receive that benefit because we are kinder and more compassionate? Isn't it? Yeah. Rather
that's
than
a really good way to think. Yeah. So you're not actually giving it to other people. Because that would, the karma can't be transferred like that. If karma could be moved about like that, then the Buddhas would have already done it. Like high lamas like His Holiness Lamazup would have given us everything already. We would have been enlightened. So we have to do it ourselves. That's the important thing to remember. The Buddhas can't give us anything. They can't take away. All they can do is teach us, and we have to do it ourselves. It's like they say in the Matrix. The Matrix, Neros says, not Neo, who is it? Get the name now. Anyway, he says, I can only show you the door, you have to walk through it.
Yeah, that's great.
So that's what the Buddha's doing. When we say that we're giving away all our karma to sentient beings, it creates this massive, powerful impact in our minds.
Yeah.
It's like a bodhicitta, that one. So you're giving away until all the sentient beings become enlightened. You're investing it in all these living beings, so it doesn't get lost.
Okay.
Something you said one time. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
What about what is out of mindfulness introspection? There's two words there. We looked at last week mindfulness introspection. I mentioned there's a lot of the DB modules. Can someone tell me what introspection is? What's the function of the mind introspection doing?
It's checking if the mind is on the object.
Yeah.
Good, yeah. Well, yes, checking if the mind is on the object. It's the police.
Yeah.
Quality control. Good, yeah. What about Maggie? What's mindfulness doing in that process?
It's where we hold our stream of awareness on an object. So then the introspection checks that we're doing that.
Great. Exactly, yeah.
In
Shantideva, there's a nice analogy where, in India, I suppose we were dealing with elephants and livestock. They would tie, they say they're tying the elephant with a rope of mindfulness to this post. And then there's this hook to see if the elephant's behaving itself, which is an introspection. It was a nice verse to describe that. Doesn't really seem so kind to the elephant, but anyway. What about Demi? Can you tell me any of the 7-point postures? There's 7 of them. Just give me 1 or 2.
Jaw and tongue.
Great, yeah, good. Why do we have to put the tongue on the roof of the mouth, according to this?
To stop
posture?
the saliva.
Yep.
Yeah.
Stop saliva, stop saliva.
Yeah.
Debbie, what about the hands? What's a good position for the hands?
To have one resting on top of the other with the thumbs connected in the middle.
Very nice, good. Yeah. Adita, what about the back and the legs? What are they doing?
So the legs are, well, we talked about it last time, in cross-legged, ideally in the lotus position, but if you can, otherwise sitting on a chair, I think it's comfortable and the legs are supported. And the back straight. And I really like what you said, we have to be kind of straight but relaxed at the same time.
Seems a bit difficult. Yes. Amina, we haven't seen you here before, I don't think. Do you want to I don't know if you're still there. Have you experienced some of these?
I'm here. I can.
Great. Did you come to some of these classes already on meditation, or is this new for you?
It's totally new. I thought that was an introduction to, so I'm just happy to listen to what happened.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you're very welcome. You're welcome to come to any of our classes. Don't worry about that. I want to check I'm explaining things at the right level. So this is week 3 of a course about how to meditate. So things that we talk about today will definitely be useful for you. So don't worry if you're coming in 2 weeks in, it's fine.
Oh, thank you.
I think Beth normally doesn't speak or we don't see her, but I think she's here. And Beth, if you want to get involved, just unmute yourself and let us know you're there. Okay then, so let's go on to some of the topics for this week. Here's a quote from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Every day, think as you wake up, today I am fortunate to be alive. I have a precious human form. I'm not going to waste it. I'm going to use my energies to develop myself, to expand my heart out to others, to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. I'm going to have kind thoughts towards others. I'm not going to get angry or think badly about others. I'm going to benefit others as much as I can. So that is a very powerful way to motivation for the beginning of the day, beginning of a practice. And why I mentioned that one in particular is also because our analytical meditation today, we're going to branch out into analytical meditations from this week on, is going to be about precious human rebirth. His Holiness mentions it there. I have a precious human life. We're going to look at exactly what that means in this session today. So we're going to come back to that. So here's the two types of meditation then, non-analytical and analytical. Or there's some synonyms in the first bullet there. Non-analytical can also be called placement meditation or stabilizing meditation. Yeah, depends which translation or which book you're looking at, but they're all kind of talking about the same thing. So as it says on the label there, it's a meditation, but you're not thinking, you're not analyzing. Yeah, we're not going through like the refuge and bodhicitta meditations at the beginning. That was an analytical meditation. We went through a series of steps to get to a specific mind, which would then generate on the basis of those steps through analysis, through thinking, right? But with when you're doing a non-analytical meditation, there is no process like that. You focus on an object without analyzing. We're going to look at some examples in the next slide. Sometimes this non-analytical meditation is called calm abiding when it gets to really advanced professional levels. Definitely not those stages. I'm just beginning. As we talked about, do you remember how many stages calm abiding had? Anybody? No. I don't know if I mentioned it in this module.
No. Seven or nine? Nine.
There are 9 stages, and then after that is the calm abiding mind. So that's a really special, that's a really powerful mind of being able to concentrate on the one object for the kind of the measure of it when you've got it is you can hold your object for 4 hours.
Oh.
I'll let you forget things, you know. In Sanskrit, that calm abiding is called shamatha, or in Tibetan called shine. I couldn't find that little thing you put over the E to make it an A on my keyboard, so it looks like shine, but it's pronounced shine. Yeah. So have you heard of these phrases, shamatha and vipassana? They're bandied around quite a lot these days. So that's these types. Roughly speaking, that's these two types of meditations. So then the analytical meditations, as I said, are those where you're thinking a series of steps to get to a certain result. So, you know, for example, you need to know the recipe, essentially, of each of these meditations in the Lam Rim to be able to generate the cake, the result. So with refuge, that first time we generated, the recipe is, well, I don't know, so I would just say it's fear and faith. So I always try to, I can adapt those words because fear is a bit, you know, I don't really like the translation, but it's hard, I always remember it. And faith is always a very loaded term these days, so I don't need to like that word either. So I tend to use things like concern or conviction or something like this, you know. So as long as you get the taste of the words are not important, it's the meaning we're going for. But it's a concern of the suffering or a fear of the suffering, and then a conviction that the 3 jewels will be able to provide the answer, the solution, you know, the resolution to that suffering. Then that's the mind, that's what it equals. So it's like 1 + 1 = Baba. So that's the recipe for refuge. So you'd analyze those 2 causes of the mind of refuge. What you should get is a mind that kind of feels very inspired and kind of safe and like friendly, if you like, or inspired by 3 jewels. Yeah. So you have to know that the formulas are like the equations of each of these meditations. Because if you end up, you know, doing meditation in your retreat, let's say on refuge, and you kind of get there, and at the end, the mind that you end up with is, let's say you end up with a mind that is really concerned about the suffering of living beings. No, let's not. Let's say you're really you're concerned about your. I can't think of an example. Anyway, I can't think of an example. But you know, if you get to the point where you're thinking a mind that's not refuge, then you haven't followed the recipe correctly. If you have followed the recipe correctly, you haven't got the right result. So you need to go back and make sure you're doing the right one. Because each of the results of the Lam Rim have very specific states of mind that have a specific purpose. They go in sequence for a very specific reason. So if you end up generating a wrong mind, then you haven't understood the recipe correctly. Yeah. So we'll come into, I'll think of a better example as we go along. Mine's going blank. So analytical meditation is sometimes called special insight in higher stages, especially when we talk about the wisdom realizing emptiness. That's called a special insight. And if you look at the Lamrim Chenma, for example, Tsongkhapa's explanation of the Lamrim in 3 volumes. This is volume 1 I'm holding up here. The special insight chapter takes up a whole massive chunk of volume 3. So calm abiding and special insight, those 2 minds are really important when we study Buddhism, which we'll come to in the next few slides. So special insight, I was, it's something like 95% of the meditations we do with the Lamrim, maybe even more, are all analytical meditations. It's quite obvious, really, isn't it, I suppose? You do need non-analytical meditations, but they're not particularly Buddhist necessarily. Depends what object you're focusing on. But all these minds, such as wisdom, refuge, bodhicitta, the 6 perfections, ethics, they're all analytical meditations. Prashum, rebirth, guru devotion, they're all analytical meditations. Sanskrit vipassana or Tibetan hlaktong. Yeah, any questions so far? Okay.
So Stuart, so obviously my analytical meditation is probably very near to 0. And I'm trying to develop the non-analytical, where the calm abiding, that's staying on the object. But can one do 2 of them simultaneously?
Probably not. No, I think you'd have to alternate. Unless, you're very skilled maybe, but, you as we'll explain in a slide later, these 2 meditations can go together, but only in the sense that you do one in preparation for the other. You would stabilize the mind with a breath and a calm mind meditation, and then that's the platform which you would then do the analytical work. But they do go together at some point on the path, but that's quite advanced. So let's look at some more detail of this one. So let's look at some examples then of these 2 types of meditation, non-analytical meditation. So watching the breath, that is the non-analytical one, clearly. The object there is, we're not analyzing, we're not thinking about the breath, are we? We're just watching what the breath is doing. Yeah. We're just watching the breath come in and out, either at the nostrils or the rise and fall of the abdomen. We're just watching, observing something, right? So that's not Buddhist, really, is it? Anyone can do that, religious or non. Nothing particular, unless you're doing it with a motivation of bodhicitta, then it can become dharma. But on its own, it's just quite neutral, right? If we're visualizing a Buddha statue, then that's quite a powerful Buddhist practice. But again, that's non-analytical. So when we talk about visualizing objects with Buddhist meditation, we're talking about an inner awareness of an object. We're not actually staring at a picture of a statue or whatever, a holy image. We're visualizing in our minds. That's when it becomes a meditation, because we're talking about here a meditation of the mind, not of the eyes or the ears.
Yeah.
So although you might see that in some circumstances, it's not technically speaking correct. You have to be an inner object for it to be a meditation in the Buddhist context to develop, properly and further. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
For example, in a Buddha statue, you could visualize in front of you, about 1 meter in front of you, about this size, about 5 or 6 inches high. You don't imagine a statue, you imagine a real living Buddha, but it's quite solid and stable. It's made of light. So that's quite powerful one. And then that also has the added benefits so that you're generating some, strong connection with the Buddha image. That's very positive karma. Helps with your refuge, etc. So there's lots of benefits of generating an image of a Buddha in your mind and meditating on that. But to hold I find holding a visual object in my mind stably is very hard because I haven't practiced it enough. So there's certain steps you have to go through to kind of keep that stable. Yeah, especially if your eyes are open. It's quite challenging. But it's really worthwhile if you can do it.
I'm just wondering, Kerry, in what sense are they using the word analytical? Because to me, analytical means to analyze. So how are they using that term?
Well, this is just one person's translation. It just means thinking.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's good.
Just thinking.
Works for me.
I mean, there are certain meditations where you would analyze and like reality, where you'd pull things apart and analyze, is this correct, etc. But that's not what we're talking here. We're just talking here about simply a thought process. You're just thinking a series of steps. Just means you've got some inner dialogue.
Yeah, I just couldn't work out how they were using, what analytical meant in this sense, but thinking works. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So when I was guiding meditation at the beginning, I was thinking for you in some sense, but you won't need it eventually once you're doing some more study, or you probably do it already. You know the recipes, where you're getting to, so then you can do it yourself. I usually use a text, for my meditations, like Lama Tsongkhapa or Lama Zopa, etc., and follow their steps. And then I have some thoughts of my own. And then at the end, I try and generate some feeling or emotional response to that. Yeah. There's a question in the chat here from Amina. Is reciting mantra silently is non-analytical? So reciting a mantra, is just a sound that you're making with the voice. That's not a meditation itself. Meditation has to be with the mind, right? It's a mental process. So if you're reciting a mantra and at the same time you're thinking of compassion, let's say you're doing Om Mani Padme Hum, which is a compassion mantra. The Buddha's thinking about suffering of the living beings and wishing they didn't have this suffering. That's a very strong positive mind. So using the mantra as a way to generate compassion in your mind. But the meditation is actually compassion. The mind is becoming familiar with compassion and generating itself in the aspect of compassion, using a mantra to do it. So it depends what's going on in the mind. You could also be reciting a mantra like Om Mani Padme Hum and thinking about what offers they've got on at Tesco's for what 2-1 offers are on a Tesco or something. So then you're not meditating on compassion at all, and you're still reciting the mantra. So check. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So where did I get to? I forget now. So the analytical meditations. So here are some that we're going to look at precious human rebirth as an analytical meditation. We've already done some, actually. You already know what you're doing. We're just relabeling it. We looked at refuge and bodhicitta. Those were two analytical meditations, right? I was leading you through a series of steps. Compassion is one, refuge is another, etc. Quite straightforward, right? Non-analytical. So calm abiding, as I said, has 9 stages. So if we're able to find the right conditions to develop this mind, such as a retreat or a period of in a space where you're not distracted too much, or you've got a certain level of detachment from the outside world, then chances are you could get through some of these stages. I always mention a story that I think I heard from Venerable Rabina when His Holiness was doing a Mind and Life conference with scientists. And he was talking to the scientists about attention span. And he was asking his Western scientists, what's the maximum, attention span according to Western science? So the scientists then gathered together and had a little chat, and they came back and said, well, we've discussed and we think it's about 8 or 9 seconds. And His Holiness was quite shocked, really shocked, because he knows that, 4 hours is the measure of this level of calm abiding. So it's a level of awareness, or kind of a stream of consciousness. That's why I usually like stream, because you're kind of living in this space of being focused on the object. It's not just like you're frozen and there's no awareness there. It's like you're constantly being aware one moment after the other without moving on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's not like you've suddenly stopped and frozen. You're aware of the object. The mind is changing the whole time, but the mind hasn't moved from the object, even though it's stable on that. With analytical meditations, you're generating a certain type of mind after analysis. So let's say you've understood the causes of refuge, which are concern and conviction, and then you generate this mind of refuge, and then you have kind of emotional response to it. It should get to kind of some feeling of, especially with precious human rebirth, when we look at that one, that is a feeling of joy and kind of like, wow, I've got something really precious in my human existence. So it should generate kind of a mind that's really exciting, and you hold that emotional response. And that's the kind of, you're generating the mind of how precious human rebirth is. But the steps to get there might have been, a bit arduous. You've got to go through a lot of lists and levels to fully appreciate that, and then you'll generate it. Eventually, you won't need the analysis. You'll be able to generate these magics like that, bam, 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 bam. But we're beginners, so we need the recipes and practice the recipes for the results. Sometimes the minds will be that we're generating like the mind becomes compassion. Example, the compassion meditation. Sometimes the meditation will be to generate a kind of an aversion to something like samsara. You want to be disgusted with the fact that we're unenlightened. As one Lama says, you have to kind of have the feeling that this place that we're living in is some kind of filthy hovel, and you've got to get out of it. You've got to get out of the suffering. You've got to get to that level of can't bear it anymore. So you're pushed towards liberation and enlightenment. Mm-hmm. So there's different ways that the meditations work, different steps psychologically. Mm-hmm. So here's a little bit about these two going together, karma abiding and special insight. So as I mentioned before, these meditations are all about becoming familiar. This word gom in Tibetan. And what we're aiming for here is these two aspects of stillness and clarity. I should have put ness there, stillness and clarity. So stillness is the ability of the mind to hold the object without moving from it, which for us beginners is actually the tricky thing at the beginning, is to be able to hold the object for any period of time without moving from it. You might often find that you're focused on the breath, and then you don't realize that you've been off thinking about something else for 2 minutes. Think, oh, I was supposed to be on the breath, and you haven't even realized you've gone. Introspection wasn't strong enough, right? So you bring your mind back when you realize, of course. But that's the first step: stillness, being able to hold the object in this stream of awareness. And then later on in karma abiding, the issues become not so much about the distracted, but it's about the object isn't very clear. Becomes a bit fuzzy, or you've got to sharpen it up, but you've got to focus it. So you've got the camera still on the object, but now you've got to focus it. Yeah. Now, those two minds are very important to go together, because you need the stillness and the clarity of the karma abiding mind. And then with the analysis, what can happen is that if you try and put them two together, you lose the stillness and the clarity because you start thinking. So when you try to join these two together, it becomes a bit like you get one, but then you lost the other. So you have to keep balancing it. Yep. And the reason why you need two together is because, let's take, for example, the wisdom realizing emptiness. Without karma abiding, you can't realize it directly. So there's a nice analogy that I was going to put on a slide, but I forgot. Get it right. There's a painting you're trying to look at in a dark room. It's a lovely painting, but you can't quite see it. So there's a candle flickering in front of the painting, but the candle's flickering. So the eyes can't quite focus on the picture behind it because the flames kind of darting about, so you can't focus on the picture. So that's like you're trying to focus on, with wisdom, the kind of analytical meditations, but you don't have the karma abiding, you don't have the stillness. Yeah. If you don't have the light at all, then you're going to not see anything, aren't you? So the light is the kind of anyway, I'm not sure. So then the reason why the candle's flickering is because you've got the door open, there's a draft blowing. So if you shut the door, then the candle will be still. The candle will be still, the flame will be solid, and suddenly you'll see what's behind, you'll see the picture, and bam, you go, it's a whatever. You'll know. So closing the door is like the karma abiding, being able to keep still. And the flame is like the insight, the analytical meditation that's trying to get there. And both of those together means you can see really precisely and clearly and directly. So those two have to be combined in the end. We work on them separately for the most part. And then they kind of join together. These are quite advanced, but it's good to know where we're going. A little topic. We mentioned it a little bit before, I think, so it's worthwhile just recapping that here. Obstacles to meditation. There's many different obstacles, but this process we just described, we're going to look at two main ones here: distraction and sleepiness. So if we're trying to get some stillness, some contact with the object with mindfulness, then the obstacle to that is clearly when you're not on it, isn't it? When you're distracted. The distraction in this sense is that you're trying to hold the object, but you're kind of pulled away by other things and you're trying to bring it back. Yeah. So distraction has a very specific meaning in this context. So not just talk about any old distraction, talk about distraction that's trying to hold the object of meditation, either the compassion or the refuge or the breath, but it's moved away. And why is that moved away? A whole host of things usually, but in the text they particularly talk about attachment and excitement. I've added in here worries and other afflictions. If your mind is kind of preoccupied with something, if it's kind of grasping at something, or it's not comfortable with something, it can be pulled away. Right? We have all this in the beginning. It's perfectly normal, and don't think you're doing badly if you have these. We all have them, but the stronger, the regular we practice with this, then the stronger the muscle gets at holding it. The mental muscle of mindfulness. And sleepiness is the opposite way, right? You might have distraction, but you kind of, nodding off. I don't know, which one do you think you are? I go through different phases with this one. Not so much the sleepiness, it'll be more distraction, but maybe you're different than me, I don't know. So there's different reasons why we are sleepy. Some of them are just quite practical, really. Maybe you haven't slept enough. Maybe the space you're in is too warm and too stuffy. Yeah, maybe it's too dark. Maybe it's the wrong time of day for you to meditate. Maybe just eating. There's all kinds of reasons why why that might kind of come about for you. You have to know your own bodies better. You know your own bodies better than I do. So that's the two ways it can go, really, for the most part. Here's some ways to counteract those obstacles. So with distraction, you want to make sure that when we're focused a bit more inwards, because the attention is going out there, it's still being attached to different objects, right? We're thinking about. So trying to bring it in, try to narrow and kind of pin it down a bit. So that's why all these things are kind of bringing us down. So you're lowering the body, perhaps, maybe lowering the head a little bit, maybe lowering the light a little bit. Use something else the text suggests is usually a sobering meditation. Like you haven't got long left, you could die even today, those kind of meditations. You don't know when you're going to die, but you're definitely going to die. It could be today. Kind of concentrate,
Very
pull you back a bit. Yeah. Then I can't stop my computer from beeping. I don't know if you hear that. All these phones and things are connecting. I can't stop them from connecting. Stop it. Oops, sorry, I've gone down too far. Oh, damn it. Back. I can't go back.
You can.
And then the opposite is true for sleepiness, right? So then if you're finding yourself sleepy, then maybe just adjust your posture so you're raising the body slightly. Check you haven't slouched. Maybe brighten the air up and maybe just make sure that you've got a bit of air coming through. You haven't got too dim the lights. Use an uplifting analytical meditation like Precious Human Rebirth. So kind of pushing yourself to think, wow, this is really exciting. I've got something really great here. Or find a different time and place could be used for both of those, depending on your own personal circumstances. Yeah. There are other obstacles, as we'll talk about maybe the last session, we talk about establishing a daily practice. But those are kind of two ones that we talk about in the text a lot. And that becomes quite important when we're talking about the levels of developing calm abiding, which you're all going to do at some stage. So here's our discussion points for today. Discuss the two types of obstacles to meditation. Do you find you have both or just one? Yeah. You need to look at the slide to remind yourself of the obstacles. Second discussion point. do you have a favorite Buddhist meditation? So if you're really new, then maybe you haven't found yours yet, or maybe you kind of like them all. So I just wanted to just see, if there's meditations you kind of hooked into yet as ones that you're really finding inspiring, out the ones that you know, obviously, or ones that you want to know. Just use it as a discussion point and see out of all the meditations that you know of or have heard of, which ones are grabbing your attention and which ones aren't. Maybe that's also an interesting question. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. I'm going to stop the recording just temporarily, and then I'm going to put you in discussion groups. Okay, I was just looking in the Lamrim Chimbo while you were discussing, and I found a quote about the elephant and the rope. Do you want to hear it? So,
yes.
In the last volume, which is the special insight chapter, there's also a bit about calm abiding at the beginning. And it's from page 49, from Bhava Viveka's Heart of the Middle Way. But it's also mentioned in Shantira, but anyway, another place I found it. So it says, the erring elephant of your mind is securely bound by the rope of mindfulness to the sturdy pillar of the object of meditation, and is gradually controlled with the iron hook of intelligence. Interesting, yeah? So that's kind of, your elephant is like what's trying to be controlled here. This unruly elephant is your mind. It's bound by a rope of mindfulness, and the puller that the rope is attached to is the object that you're focusing on, whatever it is. And then there's this iron hook that the train of the elephant is, prodding the elephant so it doesn't.
That's not very kind, is it? Prodding the elephant with a hook.
Won't go into that one. Okay, so what did you think about your discussions then? How have you got on with the, did you find a favorite meditation, or do you want to share what you thought about the obstacles and which ones are affecting you the most? I want to share anything?
I think my distractions, I don't tend to struggle with sleepiness at all, really. I think quite the opposite. I can find it really hard to shut off. And that was initially my reason for wanting to start meditating, was just to get away from being so caught up with day-to-day things like work, the gym, just those sort of things that really, in the end of things, don't really matter. So yeah, I just really struggle to switch off sometimes. And me and Stuart were saying how we both really enjoy walking meditation. I find that really helpful if I am struggling to switch off and I am still really full of energy and struggling to click to one thought. It can help me keeping my body moving, and that tends to keep that distracted, and then I can really focus on the thoughts in the mind. That tends to really help.
Yeah, very nice. Anybody else?
Well,
I was in the same.
Sorry.
Sorry, Maggie. I was just going to say that I was in the same group as Demi, and I'm the other end of the distraction candle. I'm sort of I can fall asleep at the drop of a hat. So, but walking meditation is good for that, because you can't fall asleep when you're walking. So.
Maggie, what were you going to say?
Well, we spoke about I don't know the title of it, the loving compassion meditation, where you have the person you love in front of you, you know well, and you love, and you show, I've done it quite a lot of times, but I can't remember the words really, where you show that person compassion and love, and then you show the neutral person, and then you show the person who you're having some sort of difficulty with, or having difficulty with, and you show them the same response or same compassion. And do you know the one I mean?
That's a very nice meditation. Yeah, so we can use that as a way of developing equanimity or developing love and compassion. So
equanimity. Yeah,
you could do
so that one's very practical.
Very nice. We'll try and fit that one in then before we finish this module. Nice one to do. Yeah, some very good points there. Thank you, everybody. So, I mean, as long as you know what meditation is and what it isn't, you know, walking meditation isn't necessarily a Tibetan tradition, so they don't hear many lamas talking about that one, but it is quite powerful for a lot of people. So, and you know, you could say that, you know, some people have said to me in the past, you know, well, if I'm sat on the couch, you know, watching Holby City, which apparently coming back on TV, or watching something on the TV, and your body's kind of rested and it's still, and you're just focused on that, then isn't that meditation? No? Why not? You're focused
It depends what type of meditation, I guess, doesn't it?
You're focused single-pointedly on the TV, aren't you?
Yeah.
I guess if your aim of meditation is to be relaxed and get away from day-to-day thoughts, then it could be classed as a meditation, but not in the Buddhist sense.
But that's what you wanted, wasn't it, Demi? You wanted to be relaxed, so why can't you do it by sat watching a film or TV?
I guess it's what you want out of it on top of that, isn't it?
Well, if you think that watching TV and practicing not getting angry or not getting drawn into whatever it is on the TV, that might come to transforming your mind, just watching as a blank picture. But if you're drawn into it and you're happy or crying when someone is dying, that's just relaxation, isn't it?
Well,
So
be serious for a second.
Yeah, Stuart, go ahead, sorry.
Serious for a second. I mean, I am becoming more aware of what's going on. I was quite aware anyway what's going on in my mind, but I've started to become even more aware. Now I've started doing all this sort of, all these courses on the subject. And I've noticed how there are I'm not an angry person as a rule, but I've noticed how anger does come up when I'm watching, particularly the news, for example. So in that sense, to be serious about it, it is a form of meditation, because I am becoming aware. I'm thinking, well, I've got to watch that anger that I wasn't aware of before.
But but I think that stimulus of the TV is the one that's directing your developing understanding, when really it could flick it away again. It's got to be a development that's inside your mind, not something that's where the outside is instrumental. That can't be meditation. Well, in my view, I can't, you know, it's.
No, I don't think it is.
I think it said at the beginning, like when, you know, if you're just wanting to relax, you know, maybe it's best to just go to the pub and have a pint or a wine or something, you know? Why meditate?
But it's also, isn't it also about informal meditation? We learn to focus the mind, but also we need to be aware of it, what we're thinking throughout the day as well. So
yes, there is that. That's part of the practice.
Really?
Yeah. But what is meditation? Meditation is becoming familiar with a particular kind of state of mind. And if we're talking about Buddhist meditation, then we're trying to look at positive states of mind on the path, on the spiritual path. So, you know, becoming familiar with what the Republicans are doing, trying to overturn an election, or becoming familiar with, you know, the latest offers at Morrison's. It might be meditation. In fact, they're becoming familiar, but it's not Buddhist meditation, is it? And there's a difference between relaxation and meditation. We have to get that clear in our minds. So if we're just chilling out and watching TV or just chatting with our friends, that might be relaxing, but that isn't necessarily meditation, because you're not focused on one thing continuously. The body's not ready for that stream of awareness, which is quite specific. You know, your mind, when it's watching TV or a film, is going through quite a whole range of emotions. You're being directed by the script writers and the editors to kind of experience a certain series of emotions to push a story along, aren't you? So you're not in control there. You're not taking it yourself. So it's just kind of figuring out when these things come up, people say, oh, you know, I'm relaxed, I'm meditating when I'm watching TV or something, then you have to think. But if you're sat reading a chapter of, you know, about, let's say you're reading a book about the Dalai Lama and he's talking about developing compassion, and you're sat quite quietly and you're focused on the book and you're thinking about the thoughts that the Dalai Lama is telling you, then that sounds to me like it is a Buddhist meditation. You know, you're sat there reading a book with a cup of tea and you're just thinking about these things, the thoughts then the Dalai Lama is taking you through. That is an analytical meditation by definition, right? You're thinking. If you're constantly distracted, you know, moving, and you're not really thinking about the text and you just think about something else, then it's stopped being a meditation. But if the theme is Buddhist and you're there focused, then it's a Buddhist meditation. If the theme is, you know, how to how to get angry, you know, how being angry is a great thing, and you're meditating, you're focused on that, and those are your thoughts, then that's not a Buddhist meditation at all. But it might be meditation because you're becoming familiar with getting angry. I don't know, just some thoughts there to think about. Let's move on to the let's move on to the slides. And this week's the meditation for this week, should you choose to accept, is a precious human life, precious human rebirth, sometimes it's called. So spend a few minutes gathering your body and the mind focused, as usual at the beginning. Then what we're looking at here is, let's just talk through this. We haven't got time to do the meditation, but let's just talk through it and think about it together, which is like a meditation. So this precious human rebirth that you got, the theory is, it came from very positive karma, very positive actions you did in the past to create this human life. It didn't come by accident. There's no kind of chance in the Buddhist system. It came from very specific causes and conditions. And the fact that you have a human body that's reasonably healthy in a really well-off country, you have freedom to practice, all these kind of qualities, not only having a human existence, but all these additional qualities into that mix is really, really rare and special. It's not just nothing. It's not just by chance that you're plonked here in the middle of a, you know, reasonably well-off country and have the ability to think like this. And not only that, you have the capacity of a body that is able to analyze. You weren't born into the body of an animal, which doesn't have the ability to analyze and discuss, right? That isn't by chance. You created very positive, powerful causes for that to happen. So you should be very pleased and very proud of yourself that you did that in the past. You earned it. Yeah. Not many people have this great opportunity, but you did it, you know. Now, you know, we're not looking at other people's circumstances here. The idea of this meditation is to feel very positive and very powerfully special about your existence. You know, if it goes into the idea of thinking of everyone else is unfortunate, look at them, that's the compassion when we haven't got there yet. We're still a bit few steps back, making sure that you understood your existence first. Yeah. So that's an example of where we've misunderstood the point of the meditation. If we start thinking about compassion for others and how they're suffering and how they haven't got it, we've missed the point of the rebirth meditation. So we need to just make sure we understood the point of this meditation. The point of this one is to realize what you've got is absolutely so rare and so precious. It's not by chance. It has great significance because on the basis of this precious human rebirth, you're able to develop all the qualities that you need for enlightenment, which you can't do in other realms. You've got it right here, right now. It's really quite amazing. You have everything you need to develop bodhicitta, develop love and compassion, develop emptiness, develop all these great manners. You've got it all here. Every condition you could need is right here. And it doesn't cost anything. You did the work already. So you should, the feeling I kind of generated when I thought about these minds in retreat a little bit was, it was like that kind of excitement, you know, as a little kid when it's about Christmas and going down to stairs to see all the presents and that kind of Christmassy feeling. It's kind of like you should be feeling something really special and like goosebumps, you know. There should be something kind of that mind that you've got it right now and it's really special. So those are the kind of all the points that are talked about in the Lam Rim, which comes into 3 outlines, the characteristics, which is 8 freedoms, 10 endowments, what it actually means, the precious human rebirth. Then it's kind of its rarity, hardly anyone has it. Its great profundity, because on the basis of it, you can do something really quite amazing for your spiritual path. So that's why it's often called an uplifting meditation, you know. And then you dedicate with a positive thought. So if you like, I can share with you some text for that. I've got most of your email addresses, I think. I can send you some Lam Rim outlines for these topics, which I think I might have done in the past already. So if you want some pointers on that one, you can search Precious Human Rebirth, which is the topic. PHR, as we call it in the business. His Holiness called it precious human life. That's why I've called it life here.
Precious human life.
So looking at this quote with His Holiness then, every day, think as you wake up, today I'm fortunate to be alive. I have a precious human life. I'm not going to waste it. So it's kind of a series of psychological steps the Buddha's given us here with these teachings. You start off by realizing how something amazing and precious you have right here, right now. The next step in the Lam Rim makes it even more powerful, the impact, but I won't spoil the surprise. I'll keep it hanging on that one, unless you know already. What comes next after this one? You've got something really precious and really valuable. So that's the meditation, if you want to have a look at it between now and next week. Let's just do a little dedication together, unless there's any other questions.
No, thank you.
So just take a few breaths to kind of gather your mind into drawing the mind away from the outside, as we talked about, and bringing awareness in the inside. So in our minds, we've created very positive karmic seeds after thinking and talking together. So let's dedicate that they ripen as our full enlightenment for all living beings' sake. And by the way, we'll get liberation. By the way, we'll have precious human rebirths in a series, of future lives. And by the way, we'll get happiness in this life. But our main aim, is working for enlightenment for all living beings. But you get all the other results anyway. So there's lots of people around the world that need our help right now. And although there's some positive news, there's still some confusion happening around the planet, different reasons. But we know people who are sick, people who recently died, people having mental health issues, financial circumstances, their jobs, worried about, lots of reasons why people need support. So kind of bear them in mind as we recite the last verse together in Tibetan. Jan Chu Sen Cho Rinpoche Ma Ke Pa Nam Ke Gyu Chi Ke Wan Yam Pa Me Pa Yam Go Ne Kon Du Pe Wa Sho. Thank you, everybody. I shall be